Hello, happy Wednesday.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi Mo. Thanks for doing this with me today.
Yes, yeah, totally. I'm really excited to learn more about this opportunity. This is really exciting. There's a lot happening right now.
Yeah, so much, so much. And we were hoping to come live to everybody over Instagram today, but due to the fires, we had to make some scheduling changes. But we still wanted to make sure that we got some information out to everybody about the Midland Library Gathering Circle RFQ that's open right now for applications. So we're going to do this little info session today a little bit differently. But there is also another info session next week on Wednesday on the 26th of October via Zoom at 5 p.m. So folks can go to the RAC website and RSVP there. So there won't be an opportunity to ask questions today, but you can join us next week and ask questions then, or drop questions into our IG comment section or email us, and we can also get to questions that way. But hopefully we'll hit a lot of the content today. Fingers crossed, but we're kind of rolling with it. So
yeah, and this is just like an overview, and
yes.
then the info session next week is going to be really thorough and more discussion and yeah, that opportunity to have that like interaction with the RAC team.
Exactly. So maybe we should introduce ourselves a little bit for folks who don't know.
Yeah. I can start. I'm Morgan Ritter, and I work in the public art department at RAC. My title is Public Art Exhibitions and Collections Specialist. So I do work a lot with the 2D collection of artwork and placing artwork in city and county buildings and managing special projects with artists, purchase projects and that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I do. And Sophie is my colleague. Sophie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Sophie, and I think folks are getting to know me a little bit because I've done a couple of these now, and I'm one of the new, public art project managers with RAC, also part of the public art department with Mo. And I'm managing the Midland Library projects as well as the Holgate Library projects. And so we have a lot. There are multiple public art projects at both library locations coming up. So that's why you're seeing a lot of me. And that also might be why it's a little confusing, but we're trying to make it as straightforward as possible. But it's exciting because there's so many opportunities for art right now at the libraries through this bigger library capital bond project. So it's really exciting. We're so happy to be working with the libraries and getting lots of art and new artists into these spaces. So yeah, it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, I love that too. Libraries are so important. And maybe just to review quickly, where is the Midland Library and where is the Holgate Library?
Yeah, so Midland is in I guess it's closest to the Mill Park neighborhood. So it's on 122nd and Morrison. It's on the southwest corner actually of those streets. It's a little south of Stark in East Portland, and it's not that far from Holgate. But Holgate is closer to Foster Powell Lentz neighborhood. And so we talked about the Holgate opportunity on Monday with Mario, but today we're going to be focusing on the Midland Library Gathering Circle RFQ that's open for applications right now.
Awesome. Oh, it'll be, yeah, cool to unpack some of that today. So what is an RFQ for people that don't know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's start there. That's such a good question because I know that comes up all the time, and I like to distinguish it because I think it can be confusing, especially for artists who are new to the process. So an RFQ stands for a request for qualifications. It's always a little bit of a tongue twister for me, so I feel like I trip over myself when I say it. So yeah, request for qualifications. And then an RFP is a request for proposals. So for an RFQ, what we're really looking for is for folks to submit information about their background and their experience, their interest in a particular project. So you would be asked to submit like a resume, a bio, maybe prompts to a statement of interest, images, things like that. And then for an RFP, you would be literally asked to submit a proposal. It could be a community engagement proposal, it could be a design proposal. But the biggest difference is that folks should be being paid to submit a proposal. Language that should be used to signify that would be like stipend, honorarium. It's usually a flat fee. It's not an hourly payment, but you should definitely be receiving some kind of compensation for an RFP for sure. And that's because there's usually more work involved in producing an RFP than an RFQ.
Yeah,
but for this, sorry, Mike. Yeah, but for this for the Midland Gathering Circle opportunity, we just are looking for an RFQ, so that you don't need to worry about submitting any kind of proposal at this time.
Yeah, and the hope is that those materials are maybe already developed by artists and they just kind of already have them that they can plug in. But obviously, like, you know, I'm an artist too, and I would feel like with opportunities I apply for, I would customize them to kind of suit the language of the particular call or the particular opportunity.
Yeah.
And RAC is constantly like reevaluating all of those materials and like what is necessary and try to lower the barriers. So it is like not so exhaustive to apply for things, but it kind of always is. And it's a complicated thing. It's hard to get around that, but this is hoping that artists already have those materials. Pretty much.
I think on that point, I think the thing that you should probably spend the most time on is the statement of interest. You know, there are specific prompts that the panel have and the project team have talked about that we were interested in learning about, you know, from the artists. So, you know, that's where if someone was to ask me, you know, where should I spend the most time? Like you're saying, you know, a bio, a resume, images, those are things I would expect someone to already have, and they would be easily uploadable, you know. But a statement of interest is where I would spend the most time kind of customizing that for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, it's always a tricky aspect of opportunities. So let's see. So tell us more about the Midland Library and what kind of artwork you're looking for.
Yeah, so for folks who've been paying attention, we did launch a different opportunity for Midland Library a couple months ago that was for the exterior of the building. This opportunity is different. It's for the inside. So as part of the renovation at Midland Library, the current square footage of the library is 24,000 square feet, and it's going to be expanded by 6,000 square feet. So it'll be 30,000 square feet in total when it's finished. And the inside is going through what's called a gut renovation, which means the entire inside is being completely remodeled, which is pretty exciting. So there'll be lots of new fancy shiny things to enjoy once it's opened. And as part of that, there's going to be a new entryway, and as you walk through the new entryway, on the opposite side of the space, on the what is going to be the north side, there's going to be a gathering circle. So it's going to be a communal seating area for folks who use the library, also library staff, to sit together and foster kind of connection and relax and enjoy that environment together. So we're looking to create a 2D artwork that's going to frame that space. Predominantly, the artwork will be on the north wall of the gathering circle, but it can also expand to the east wall. So it'll almost be like an L shape. It doesn't have to expand to the east wall, but it can if the artist would like to do that, and the budget allows for that. So it is a 2D wall-mounted artwork that we're looking for. It can encompass 3D elements and texture. The artwork will extend down to heights, though, where people will be able to reach and touch the artwork, including children. So that needs to be taken into account. So the artwork needs to be durable, and we should expect that people will touch it over time. So it should be easily cleaned and tamper resistant. We're open to what the medium could be. So it could be a mural, but again, there could be texture elements in there, and 3D elements. And it can extend between 4 and 6 inches from the wall, depending on the height of the wall. And there will be some bench seating in front of the north and east walls as well. So that should be considered also.
That's great. That's so helpful to hear. And I'm just assuming that there'll be all of these details in the guidelines and in the Zoom info session next week, where you'll probably show like a representation or like a what's it called, like a
rendering.
What'd you say?
Like a rendering.
Yeah, a site rendering, so people can have a sense of scale.
For sure.
Of the walls.
Yeah, and I would definitely direct folks to go to the website and take a look at the full RFQ and the supplemental material packets for specifics on the size of the walls, and the dimensions and the total square footage of the space, and all those details. It's all in there. And then join us next week for the info session, because a member of the design team will also be joining us, so that you can ask even more questions about those specifics as well.
That's awesome. And just quickly, will artists be responsible for fabricating the piece?
It depends on who's selected. You know, if a mural artist is selected, you know, we understand that you know, obviously painting is such a huge part of a mural artist's work, and there's a lot of ownership over that part of the process. So we wouldn't necessarily encourage that part of the process is done by somebody else. But if an artist is selected who works in a different medium, and there are 3D elements being created that aren't necessarily possible for that artist to create alone, then we would help to connect them with a fabricator that would help to make those parts, and connect them with somebody who would also help to install that. You know, we also, as you know, Mo, because you're part of that team, for us, you know, we have a collections and installation team with RAC who help to install work at different sites as well. So there are different options. It's not too prescribed at this point. It's kind of impossible to do that without the artist being selected. But I think that there are options available between us, the project team, you know, other partners that we have, depending on who's selected.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That helps, and I'm sure we'll get into budget a little bit more, and people can learn about that too.
Yeah.
So with like the collaborators and the team that kind of weighs in on the design, like tell us more about how that process happens and how the community is involved with weighing in on this project.
Yeah, so the project partners involved are obviously Multnomah County Library. They are overseeing the larger library bond project. And then Co-Locate Design and Bora Architects make up the project design team. Specifically, Co-Locate Design have been leading the community engagement efforts so far on the project. They have been conducting a really embedded community engagement process in the last year, with Midland Library staff, Midland Library patrons, and community members in the surrounding neighborhoods. So community engagement is a really kind of key component to this project. And the selected artist would be all of that information that's already been gathered would be shared with the selected artists or artist. And there is an expectation for the artists selected for this project to continue with community engagement as part of their design process for this artwork. Specifically, we're requesting that they host at least 2 community engagement sessions as part of their design process. Again, that there's a lot of questions about what community engagement is, what does that look like. I don't want to dictate that too much at this point, because again, I think it depends on who's selected, and if an artist already has that embedded in their practice, and if they already have process around it. But what I would say is that I think community engagement can look like a lot of different things, and I think that we would encourage folks who maybe have experience in non-typical and non-traditional ways of engaging with community to apply. And what I mean by that is, skills are transferable. And so if you have experience teaching, mentoring, volunteering, doing work as a community organizer, or organizing events in your community, volunteering with your kids after school club, things like that. That's all applicable, and I think it's just as valuable, if not more, than some kind of other mainstream sort of things that are considered more official community engagement. Yeah, we're really looking for folks who are really embedded in the Mill Park neighborhood, who have connection to Midland Library, who have personal connection to Southeast Portland and this part of town, and who represent and reflect the communities who are served by Midland Library. It's really important to us that those communities are represented in the artwork, for sure. There's a deep desire for a sense of belonging in the new artwork that's being created at the library, and for a sense of place to be created by the new artwork. And I think one of the other things we've been talking about is that it's kind of impossible for us to put that kind of pressure on any one artist or one artwork. And so instead, what we're really looking for is for the collection of artwork at the library to really do that together, to really represent and reflect and include the entire community as a collection.
That makes sense. And I just appreciate how this project in particular just is willing to meet artists kind of where they're at, and it's not too rigid in terms of like exactly the artist's previous experience with community engagement and it needs to have experience doing installation. Like, you are a guide, our team at RAC is there to collaborate and support, and all the other collaborators obviously. So I just feel like there's a lot of flexibility, actually. So I like that it opens up to artists, with where they're at, and we can kind of encourage the development of artists too, who may be not as experienced. So
for sure,
kind of a special thing. Sometimes I feel like artists may not apply because they feel like, oh, I've never done public art, or I've never done community engagement. And I do want to encourage people to just try and kind of begin the conversation, and we'll just see how it can work. But we're there to provide feedback at like every step of the way.
Definitely. And there, with so many different project partners involved, there is a lot of support, so between RAC, the design team, and Multnomah County Library, there's a lot of support involved in this project. And so, we have been trying to encourage folks, like you're saying, who wouldn't normally consider applying, because we do have more support involved in this project than others. And so, let's give it a go. Let's try.
I love that, Sophie. So glad you're working on this. Okay, so let's just review like the basics again of the timing for this.
Oh, yeah. So the call's open now. It's open until November 3rd. Applications are due that day, November 3rd at 5 p.m. We're going to move through the review process and the selection process pretty quickly in November and December, and then we hope to have an artist selected before the end of the year in about mid-December.
Cool, okay. Yeah, and then that's all outlined in the materials too.
Yeah, yeah. And then in terms of the project schedule, the selected artists would come on pretty quickly in in the new year in January. There would be about 6 months of community engagement and design phase, and then again, depending on the medium that the artist is working in, we would expect fabrication to sort of happen between June 2023 and January 2024, and then the artwork would need to be installed in February, March 2024. The library, Midland, is due to reopen in spring, summer of 2024.
Okay, that's really helpful. Okay, so we already talked about partners, but if you wanted to add anything about that, feel free.
I think we covered most of that, but I'm sure people are wondering about money.
I know, that's the big one.
The big one. Yeah, so the budget for this project is $60,000, and it is an all-inclusive fee. So that $60,000 includes all project expenses. So artist fees, time for design development, materials, fabrication, installation, time for community engagement, any communication or coordination with the design team, the construction team, any third-party contractors. So unlike some of the other projects we've been talking about lately, where there has been a separate allocation for certain aspects of the project, this fee, the $60,000, is all inclusive. So the artist would just need to keep that in mind, that as they're budgeting, everything needs to come out of that pot of money.
Okay. Yeah. And then eligibility and art selection process. Who is eligible for this again?
Yeah, so this opportunity is open to artists and artist teams in Oregon and Washington. If you're applying as a team, at least one person needs to meet the residency criteria. So one person needs to live in Oregon or Washington in order to apply. We're really interested in people with current or past connections to Midland Library, Southeast Portland, Mill Park neighborhood, or the surrounding neighborhoods. Again, really interested in people who have experience with community engagement. Again, doesn't have to be typical background in that. I explained kind of other options of what that could look like. We really would like to represent the communities that live, work, and play in the Mill Park neighborhood as well. So communities of color, folks that come from immigrant and refugee backgrounds are also encouraged to apply. Yeah, folks who just have a deep sense of community and connection to working with youth, elders, intergenerationally, folks who come from historically marginalized and underrepresented communities. We're really looking for applications from all of those folks.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to just reach out if they have different access needs. And
sure.
we'll work to meet them, whether it's like translation or materials, access to equipment. We're here to support artist vision. So
yeah, definitely. There are options, all sorts of options in the RFQ on our website for different access needs. And if there's something that is missing, please feel free to reach out.
Okay, and then I guess a little bit about the selection process and just like how that goes. So artist submits their application, which contains those materials of like
Yeah.
CV, statement of interest, you know, work
Yeah.
samples. Then how does that work? How does all of that get reviewed?
Yeah, so all of the application materials are submitted through the RAC Opportunity Portal, which is an online portal which you can access at rac.org/apply. If you already have an account, you just log in. If you do not have an account, you just create one. And then we go through a couple different rounds of review. Everything is done virtually at the moment. So we do everything online and via Zoom. Here we are. And we have a selection panel for the Midland Library projects that are made up of folks from the Multnomah County Library. We have a couple of local artists, community members from East County, folks from the design team, and they all are part of the review process and selection process as well. So yeah, it's a pretty intensive process, you know, for them, depending on how many people apply, you know, and they're a great group of people, and a lot of them have been involved in this process for quite some time, and they take their role very seriously. So, you know, and I don't envy their job in a lot of ways, because you know, it can be tough to make those decisions, you know, when you get such great applications, you know. So I think it's definitely a privilege in this situation to have several public art projects at one location, because hopefully we get you know, multiple opportunities, right, to select artists, which means just more people, more opportunities for people, which is so lovely, and ultimately more for the community. That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then like what you're saying, one project doesn't need to have everything, you know, we're just working on selecting different projects that represent, you know, different practices and different communities, and just, yeah, take a little weight off of, you know, wanting to have like a complete world in and of itself. I love that this project is like, it's the wall mounted piece around the gathering circle. So it's just like landing space for people to, you know, just gather and be in physical space again, and
Mhm.
encounter people maybe they haven't met before, and
Yeah,
have a little like reflection time.
yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. In my mind, when I think about it, you know, I think about all the really beautiful interactions that can happen in that space, you know, in the future, and what the artwork might be part of, you know, what conversations it might encourage, and um, yeah, what it might be the backdrop to, you know.
Mhm.
So it's really exciting to think about.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, I feel like we've covered a lot. Is there
Yeah.
something that maybe we're forgetting to talk about?
I think the only other thing I wanted to mention for people just to be aware of, so we also have the Holgate Library opportunity open at the moment for the exterior site enclosure. And that opportunity, while it is an exterior artwork, there are some similarities to this piece for the Midland Gathering Circle. And I could see there being crossover for artists in terms of medium and potentially wanting to apply for both. And so what we've done is we've created the opportunity in the online application portal to do that. So folks can submit in order to try and be generous to artists and not have to apply. And not have to apply separately twice. We've created the opportunity to just submit one application, but there is a question that asks if you would like to apply for both projects, or have your application be considered for both projects. So if you do, just answer that question and you can submit one application and you'll be considered for both projects. If you don't, that's totally fine. There's no pressure. If one project feels more aligned or you feel more called to one over the other, just again answer that question however you feel called to. But if you do, there's no harm in selecting both, and you'll be reviewed for both just by submitting that one application. So I hope that makes sense. Essentially, we're just trying to, again, lower the barrier and make it easier to submit one application, but to be considered for two opportunities. So that's the only other thing I wanted to mention.
I feel like that's really unique, and I really want people to take advantage of that if they're, you know, interested in that. So one application can let them be considered for both the Holgate Library and the Midland Library.
Yeah.
And the Holgate Library is not a RFP, it's not a request for proposal. Okay. So
No.
they're both a similar format where you just present your previous work samples and a statement of interest that doesn't necessarily have to, so even if someone is really connected with Midland neighborhood and not Holgate, they can still be considered for both. Because they're like similar areas.
They're very similar areas in you know, Southeast, East Portland. We've aligned the application to have very similar questions. Both projects are, you know, kind of deeply centering community engagement. Both projects are you know, seeking 2D wall-mounted artworks. One is inside, one is outside. Both could have texture and 3D elements. So there's a lot of similarities. I do want to mention, even though you would be considered for both, it doesn't necessarily mean you will get both. So you know, if you get selected, you would only be selected for one. We're not trying to monopolize here.
No, that's such a good point. You know, I totally forgot about that.
But you know, we're trying to just be generous and say there are a lot of similarities here, and therefore, you know, you could be considered for both. Just submit one application. You don't need to spend the time and the labor and the energy doing this twice, you know.
Yeah, that is just so streamlined. And because Midland is this call is for work that is durable and can withstand a lot of contact, it makes sense to me that both opportunities will be connected, because, you know, Holgate's exterior, and I'm imagining like the Midland could be things like panels of ceramic tile, or, you know, something that really can exist in an external environment too. And so if an artist is selected, do they have like a opportunity then to make a proposal?
Yeah, so what we would do, I mean, typically what we would do is, you know, go through to a semi-finalist, you know, where 3 to 5 semi-finalists would be selected through after the application process. And it really depends on what the panel decides is necessary for the project. But typically those 3 to 5 artists are invited to interview with the panel, and we collaborate on questions that we ask the artist to get more information about them and how they feel about the project and their work and their background and maybe the ideas they have about the project. In this situation, because there is so much community engagement, it's kind of impossible to get really specific about a proposal for the project, because you can't create the proposal without the community's input.
That totally makes sense.
So it's kind of chicken and egg, you know. So you can't really do that. There can be ideas for sure. There can be, you know, kind of a template, but you can't really get too granular without going through that community engagement process. So there's a certain amount of trust that has to happen, you know, with that stage of the process, and yeah, just you know, the next steps of that process. So yeah, we just have to wait and see what happens.
Okay, cool. Well, I encourage people to drop, questions and comments here in the chat, or in the comment section.
Yeah, I know we're doing things a little bit differently today. Yeah, so drop
And
questions in
also
the comments.
reaching out to Sophie if there's any questions. I know you're such a great, resource for people. So
Oh, thanks, Mo.
yeah, thank you for chatting with me.
Yeah,
And
thank you
so
so
cool to
much.
learn about this.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.